So, all right. So, first thing to talk to you about, because we're just basically going to try and pump out some of this topic ware that we've got going on. All right. First thing is the Montreal Commission proposed rule changes. What have you got to say about that? Do you want to bring everybody up to speed on the whole strike box and what's going on there?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, strike box was just an incident last week where they had a match where they wanted to do kickboxing style rules. The commission the day before would only go with MMA rules, and the fighters went with a gentlemanly agreement to only stand. That didn't happen in the main event. James Thompson took his opponent to the ground, Steve Bossy, and started striking, which resulted in a riot. So kind of a bit of confusion. The commission has a new president, or a new commissioner that started January, and what he did is he said, let's just look at the regulations of what we do have. And turns out the last 10 years in Quebec, they've never really properly documented what they should do. They've just allowed the rules to be what they were. But yeah.
If I can interrupt for a second, for anyone who doesn't know Marc-Andre Drolet, he's from Winnipeg. He's a commissioner for Canadian Fighting Championships. He's a manager. He does a bunch of web stuff. He's just really tuned in Canadian mixed martial arts. But Marc-Andre, so at the strike box, when Josh Thompson decided to just start dropping bombs on the ground, why did he do that when everybody had seemed to agree to stand and fight?
Well, I mean, everyone's putting a lot of blame on him, and to me it shouldn't even matter. They shouldn't even have rules that are set one way but want to be interpreted another. But he's saying that he wasn't aware that it was going to be MMA rules with an agreement to stand. The referee told him, he said before, Yves Levine, that it was an MMA rules matchup, and that's what he was going to do. He also didn't feel he lost his last fight fairly for Elite XC against Kimbo in the main event.
He's in
a scenario where he's fighting the promoter's top guy, so he didn't want to be taken for a ride somehow.
That's a great point.
I mean, technically, he didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, because, for people who remember Thompson fighting Kimbo, his ear exploded into a blood and pus kind of eruption, right?
And the second that happened, they basically shut the fight down. The fight was stopped
when he had beat Kimbo at the end of the first round,
totally.
Right? So this guy's been screwed over by promoters before, and all of a sudden Yves Levine is telling him these are MMA rules, and he's like, well, what the hell? Like, the promoter's big top guy, I'm fighting him, and they're saying it's a gentleman's agreement. I mean, I don't blame the guy either, really.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're fighting a guy who basically is the promoter's top guy. Yeah. You're sort of on the road to getting screwed, and if you felt you got screwed against Kimbo, who is obviously one of the world's greatest MMA fighters, then you're going to do what you can to win the fight. And so if you think you're getting screwed, and so then obviously it turns into a riot. So
then what's up with the commission, Marc-Andre? What's going on out there?
Well, UFC came into town yesterday, I believe, and they're working it out right now. So we're waiting to hear. Hopefully this week they'll straighten that out.
Yeah, because
what's the threat? What's the threat that, like, if the UFC can't work it out, what happens with the UFC event coming to Montreal, the next one?
They would either move or not. They would not follow these rules that Montreal's imposing, or the commission is imposing.
Yeah, so Quebec is putting out rules that just don't jive with what the UFC's been doing their whole time. With a smaller cage.
The new rules is what you're talking about, right? Because the old rules didn't really matter. Because the UFC came into town. I was at that event.
Yeah, but
it was off the hook. It was amazing.
Yeah, but that was under that was rules that aren't on the Quebec books. So the Quebec books, the way they stand now and have always stood, including on the GSP Sarah fight, are rules that, the 4-minute rounds and all different rules in the UFC. So they worked under artificial rules that weren't on the books, and now their books say that what the UFC does, they don't have a commission, rule book for.
Okay, so Marc-Andre, if you want to just quickly pipe in and tell us, what do you think the odds are that this is, the UFC is going to work it out? I mean, we're talking about a major, it's like, obviously it's going to be a sellout. We're talking Anderson Silva fighting anyway, so it's going to sell out. Right, and then you've got massive amounts of people doing pay-per-views in Canada. So what do you think the odds are they're going to get this thing sorted?
I think they'll figure it out when they look at the books and how much money they made last year at UFC 83 and what this means to their pocketbooks.
Yeah, so they'll work it out, eh? Like, I mean, that's what I was saying. Like, you look on the internet and or any MMA media. Hey, I guess we're MMA media kind of now.
Sort of.
That's bullshit.
Not really.
Not really.
There's absolutely no way we'd ever be taken seriously.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, you look at this media, and all these people are saying, "Oh, it could get canceled. It could get canceled." I'd say the chance of that is like nil. You got like a couple of guys with gray hair sitting around in Quebec. Dana White rolls into town. You know, it's like he's just $1 billion industry rolls into town. There's just no way that it can't get fixed.
Right, and it's just people throwing out FUD just because they want people to check out their websites and blog on it and argue about it.
For sure.
So, okay, next subject. Marc-Andre, you ready? There's some numbskull named Grant Nordman, who's the St. Charles City Councilor for Winnipeg. And you guys had the CFC event, which Robin was part of.
Yep.
Yes, I was, yeah.
Right. So
a sexy part.
Right. So this, because one of the fights went to decision and then one of the fighters was taken to hospital afterwards, this city councilor basically said that he wants to have MMA banned, and he was starting to equate it to, shockingly, John McCain-style tactics of human cockfighting and whatnot.
Ghouls and
right, exactly. Like all the fans were ghouls because they were watching it and whatnot. So what do you have to say about that, Marc-Andre?
I really don't have too much to say about him. I mean, he's just uninformed. A lot of it, I believe, was that they're looking for a way to grandstand, which is what politicians do. So I'm not even going to fault them for that. The only reason I spoke up here locally in the media was to inform the uninformed people listening that didn't think what he was talking about had any kind of merit. And I just wanted to point out that if he's making decisions on MMA, all I can tell for absolute certainty is that that's one thing I know in this world, and I can say that he does not. So every other decision this guy makes, past, present, or future, better be way more diligent in his research in those areas. And, maybe that's more important than what we do. I mean, McCain at least was talking about having the sport regulated in the early 90s. We are regulated.
Right.
Yeah. There's a fellow councilman of his on the commission. That's what we do. So to call for a ban, it was just kind of ludicrous. Nobody really took any stock or merit in it. The people that legislate the sport haven't had any problems with how anything was conducted. And the show is a success, and we're looking forward to our next one.
Well, Marc-Andre, I know you don't want to say anything bad about this city councilor, but I think he's a tool. I can say bad stuff. He sounds like a tool.
Well, yeah, I mean, you really got to know what you're doing if you're going to call someone out, right? And
do you know the guy?
And once he realized how informed and educated we were, I mean, it's the only argument we would have won against the guy probably, and he had to pick it on us, so it wasn't really too smart.
Yeah, you weren't going to win some argument with him about, vehicle emissions or anything, but if he wanted to talk about MMA, you guys were going to be able to stop him.
Here, why don't we have a quick 1-minute argument? I'll be the retarded city councilor, Grant Nordman, and Marc-Andre, you can be you. And we'll go from there. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, okay.
You young people with your MMA kicking people in the face it's just not good, and it's human cockfighting. Your argument.
I don't agree with that. Cockfighting is a whole other issue. But I can give you free tickets to the show if you want to check it out, that's for sure.
No, you people just don't know what you're doing because you're killing people, young people, and then you're getting all the children to punch each other with those crazy video games with the guns and the violence, and then those movies with the shooting, and now with the martial arts where you're just punching people to the point where they have to go to the hospital. It's setting a bad example. There's blood spewing everywhere. You are wrong.
Marc-Andre, you don't have to respond to this.
Actually, it sounds like he was describing the internet.
All right.
Yeah,
that's all I got. It's like the worst argument in the world.
Yeah, it sounds like you were describing the internet. It's true, though. Let's face it. I mean, when you look at stuff, I know this.
I didn't know how to answer that.
What's that?
He's like, I don't know how to answer that. I don't blame him. But
I was told once never to argue with an idiot, because to someone on the outside, they wouldn't know who's who.
Right. Well, that's good, because I'm an idiot, so it works out perfectly.
Nice.
Especially Grant Nordman. My sad impersonation.
I know this is like incredible oversimplification, and everyone who's passionate about anything always will argue things to a T, right? But
you know what they do though? They also grab shit that it's totally unrelated,
for sure,
and they group it all together.
100%.
And then all of a sudden you got 18 subjects looped into one, and that one thing's the root cause of all the problems in society. And reality is they're just fucking retarded.
Hey, and anybody who wants to argue something can argue it forever. Like when, you know...
Oh, yeah, you can pick a side and away you go, right?
Right-wing people want to argue gay marriage forever. They say, well, if we don't stop it now, people are going to marry their pet goats.
Right.
Nobody's marrying a fucking pet goat.
That's
you know what
tempting,
I mean?
though.